24 years. That's how long Turkey waited to come back to a World Cup. 24 years of near misses, of playoff heartbreak, of watching from home while the rest of the planet played in the only tournament that truly matters. And when they finally made it back, when they finally walked out under the lights, they lasted exactly 180 minutes. 2 games, 0 goals, gone. But here's the part that doesn't make sense. If you only looked at the raw numbers from their final match, the game that actually sent them home, you would swear Turkey won it comfortably. So, let me show you something strange. How a team can dominate almost every meaningful statistic on the pitch and still end up packing their bags. This is the story of Turkey 0, Paraguay 1. And it might just be the most baffling elimination of the entire World Cup. Let's start with the expectation, because Turkey did not arrive at this tournament as underdogs. After 2 decades away, they came in as one of the quiet dark horses. A talented, modern side. Real names, real quality, a coach with a clear identity. The kind of team you pencil in for the knockout rounds without thinking twice. And then, the group stage happened. First, a flat, frustrating 2-0 defeat to Australia. Disappointing, but survivable. Which set up a simple equation against Paraguay. Perform, and they stay alive. And for about 60 seconds, the plan was intact. Then it fell apart. 65 seconds. That is all it took. Turkey were sloppy in their own half, casual with a pass they had made 1,000 times, and Paraguay pounced. The ball broke to Matias Galarza, and from outside the box he let fly. Low, hard, into the bottom corner. The fastest goal of the entire World Cup. 1 minute in, and Turkey were already chasing the game, already staring at the exit, already forced to throw caution to the wind far earlier than any team ever wants to. And here is where the story gets fascinating. Because Turkey did not crumble. They did the opposite. They came forward in wave after wave after wave. They turned that game into a siege. By the time the final whistle blew, the shot count read 32-7. 32 shots. They put 5 of them on target. They racked up an expected goals figure of around 2.1 against Paraguay's 0.32. Read that again. 2.1 expected goals to 0.32. On paper, that is not a close game. That is a hammering. They touched the ball inside Paraguay's penalty box 50 separate times. 50! And the final score still says they lost. So how? How do you generate that much and walk away with nothing? Let's talk about the chances, because this is where it becomes almost painful to watch. Early on, Arda Güler had the ball laid back perfectly on the edge of the box, the kind of chance a player of his level buries in his sleep, and he ballooned it over the bar. Then came a free kick, whipped in beautifully, and Mert Mulder rose to meet it and somehow struck both the crossbar and the post with a single header. Both. The woodwork said no twice in one motion. After the break, Kenan Yildiz sliced in from a tight angle and rolled it agonizingly into the side netting. Late on, with the clock screaming, Uzun carved out a shooting chance from 18 yards and was denied by a brilliant save. And then, in stoppage time, the last gasp, a header that drifted inches, literal inches, past the post. Chance after chance after chance, and not one of them went in. Now, you cannot tell this story honestly without the moment that should have changed everything. Just before halftime, Paraguay's Miguel Almiron was sent off. Not for a tackle, not for violence. Under the new rule, for covering his mouth during a heated confrontation, an offense the video officials flagged and the referee upheld. So, for the entire second half, Paraguay played with 10 men. Think about that. Turkey, already dominating, now had a man advantage, a full 45 minutes, and a World Cup life to save. And Paraguay simply refused to break. They dropped deep, packed bodies behind the ball, surrendered possession. They ended the night with just 22% of it, and defended that 1-goal lead with their lives. Sometimes, football isn't about being the better team. It's about being the more stubborn one. And that brings us to the real lesson buried in all these numbers. Because it's tempting to say Turkey were unlucky, and in the moment, sure, they were. But zoom out, and a harder truth appears. Across both of their World Cup games, Turkey took 62 shots, 62, and did not score a single goal. That is now a World Cup record, the most efforts at goal across a two-match span in the history of the tournament without one of them hitting the net. That is not bad luck anymore. That is a pattern. The problem was never creating chances. Turkey created a mountain of them. The problem was the final 5 yards. The finish, the cold, ruthless instinct to put the ball away when it matters, and on the biggest stage of all, they simply didn't have it. This is the brutal gap between expected goals and actual goals. Expected goals tells you the quality of the chances you build. It is a measure of process. But the scoreboard only cares about outcome, and a team can win the process emphatically, can outcreate, outshoot, outpressure their opponent by a mile, and still lose, because football, in the end, rewards the team that finishes, not the team that dominates. Paraguay had one good chance all night. They took it in 65 seconds, and then defended like their lives depended on it. Turkey had 32 and converted none. One of those teams is still in the World Cup. The other flew home. There's a version of this game that Turkey win 4-1, and nobody would blink. The XG says they were the better side. The shot map says they were the better side. Your eyes, watching the run of play, would tell you they were the better side. And it would not matter at all, because the only number on the scoreboard that counts is the one in the goals column, and theirs stayed stubbornly, agonizingly, on 0. 24 years of waiting ended in 180 minutes by the one statistic they couldn't manufacture. So here's the question I'll leave you with, because it's the one that really matters. When a team dominates this completely and still loses, is the data lying to us? Is expected goals overrated, a comforting story we tell ourselves about games we deserve to win? Or is this just football doing what football has always done, reminding us that domination is not the same as victory, and that the most important skill in the sport is also the simplest and the cruelest, putting the ball in the back of the net? Turkey could do everything else. They just couldn't do that. And it cost them the World Cup.